Sometimes people don't leave you all at once. They leave you in pieces. A missed call here. A cancelled plan there. Until one day you look up and realize you've been standing alone for a while. This is Breakup Diaries. Stories about love, truth, and the moments that change everything. The first time he cancelled, I told myself it was nothing. Work happens, deadlines come up, life gets busy. That's what people say when they want to believe everything is still okay. Hey, I'm so sorry, Daniel had said over the phone. Something came up at work. I'll make it up to you, I promise. And I believed him. Because that's what you do when you trust someone. You don't question every little thing. You don't assume the worst. You give them the benefit of the doubt, especially when they sound sincere. So I smiled, even though he couldn't see me, and said, "It's fine, I understand." And at the time, I really thought I did. But then it happened again. And again. A dinner we had planned for weeks. A weekend trip he had been excited about. Even my birthday. Each time, it was the same explanation. It worked. Always work. At first, it felt temporary, like something we just had to get through. But slowly, it stopped feeling like that. Because it wasn't just the plans he was missing. It was the way he started to feel distant. Our conversations got shorter. His replies came slower. Sometimes, I'd tell him something important, and he'd respond like he wasn't really listening. Like his mind was somewhere else entirely. And the worst part, I couldn't point to one big moment where everything changed. It was small things, quiet things. The kind that don't seem serious on their own. But together, they start to mean something. I remember sitting alone one night, staring at my phone, rereading our messages. Trying to figure out when the shift happened. When we started to feel like just me. I wanted to ask him. I wanted to say, "What's going on with you?" But every time I got close, I stopped myself. Because what if the answer was something I wasn't ready to hear? So instead, I stayed quiet. And told myself it would pass. That things would go back to how they were. But deep down, I think I already knew something wasn't right. I just didn't know yet. How wrong I was about the reason. If you think it stopped at missed plans, it didn't. It just got quieter. Harder to explain. Because after a while, it wasn't what Daniel was doing that bothered me. It was what he wasn't doing anymore. The good morning texts became inconsistent. The late-night calls turned into quick check-ins. The long conversations we used to have faded into short replies that felt rushed. A busy today. A long meeting. Can I call you later? Later rarely came. At first, I tried to match his energy. Told myself not to overthink it, not to be that person who reads too much into everything. But something about it felt rehearsed. Like I had heard it all before. Not once. Not twice. But enough times for it to stop sounding real. I remember one evening, I called him unexpectedly. He didn't pick up. That wasn't unusual anymore. But what was unusual was how long it took for him to call back. 2 hours. When he finally did, his voice sounded normal. Too normal. Hey, sorry, I was caught up at work. I paused for a second. Because something about that sentence didn't sit right with me anymore. Not because it was new, but because it was. It was the same explanation, the same tone, the same timing. And suddenly, I realized something I hadn't before. It wasn't just that he was busy. It was that every explanation sounded exactly the same. Like he didn't even need to think about it anymore. Like it had become automatic. And that's when doubt started to settle in. Not loudly. Not all at once. Just enough to make me question things I used to accept without hesitation. I started noticing the gaps. The moments where his stories didn't fully connect. The way he avoided certain questions. The way he changed topics just slightly when things got too specific. Small things. But they added up. And for the first time, work didn't feel like the full truth anymore. I didn't know what the truth was yet. But I knew one thing. Something wasn't adding up. If you've ever felt like something was off, but couldn't prove it, stay with me. Because what I noticed next, that's when everything started to change. If doubt had a sound, it would be silence. The kind that fills the space between what someone says and what you feel. That's where I was. Daniel hadn't changed overnight. That would have been easier to understand. Instead, it was gradual, subtle. The kind of shift you can almost ignore until you can't anymore. I started noticing things I used to overlook. The way he paused before answering certain questions. The way he'd say he was at work, but never mention anything specific about it. No details, no stories, just the same vague explanations. One night, I asked him what project he was working on. Simple question. But his answer came too quickly. Too general. It's just a lot right now. That was it. No follow-up, no elaboration. And for the first time, I didn't let it go so easily. Not outwardly. But internally, something shifted. Because I realized I didn't actually know what he was doing anymore. Not really. The person I used to talk to about everything had become someone I was starting to guess about. And that feeling, it doesn't stay small. It grows. Quietly. I started replaying conversations in my head. Looking for patterns. Trying to connect things that didn't quite fit. And the more I paid attention, the more I realized how much I had been ignoring. Not because I was naive, but because I trusted him. And trust makes you comfortable with things that should probably make you pause. But now I was pausing. And once you start doing that, you can't stop. Because every small detail starts to feel important. Every inconsistency starts to mean something. And every unanswered question feels heavier than the last. I didn't know what he was hiding, but I was starting to believe he was hiding something. If I'm being honest, I didn't go looking for the truth at first. It just found me. Daniel had left his laptop open that evening. That alone wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the email on the screen. I wasn't trying to invade his privacy. At least, that's what I told myself. But something about it caught my attention. Maybe it was the subject line. Or maybe it was the feeling that had been building inside me for weeks. Either way, I looked. And what I saw didn't make sense. It wasn't a message from another woman. It wasn't anything romantic at all. It was a payment confirmation. Large, repeated. Sent to a name I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it was work-related. But the more I looked, the less that explanation made sense. Because these weren't random payments. They were consistent, intentional, and personal. My heart started to race, not because I understood it, but because I didn't. I scrolled a little more. Carefully, slowly. Trying not to jump to conclusions. But the more I saw, the clearer it became. This wasn't something recent. It had been happening for a while. And somehow I had never noticed. I leaned back, staring at the screen as everything started to shift again. Because this didn't match the story I had built in my head. It wasn't cheating. At least, not in the way I expected. But it was still something hidden. Something significant. Something he had chosen not to tell me. And in that moment, the question changed. It was, is he lying anymore? It was. Why? Why would he hide something like this from me? And more importantly, what else did I know? I didn't wait this time. I couldn't. By the time Daniel got home, I already knew I wasn't going to stay quiet. Not again. You've been lying to me, I said. No build-up, no hesitation. Just the truth. He froze for a second. Not surprised. It just caught. What are you talking about? He asked. I shook my head. Don't do that, I said softly. Not this time. I told him what I saw. The payments, the name, the pattern. And for a moment, he didn't say anything. Then he sat down. Slowly. Like whatever he had been holding in was finally too heavy to carry alone. It's not what you think, he said. I let out a quiet breath. Then tell me what it is. And that's when everything changed. He told me about the debt. Not his. Mine. A loan I had taken years ago, before we met. Something I had struggled with, something I thought I had buried. He had found out. And instead of telling me, he started paying it off. Quietly. Consistently. Every extra hour, every late night. Every missed moment. That's what all the work was, he said. I just stared at him, trying to process it. You were doing all of this, and you didn't tell me. He shook his head. I didn't want you to feel like a burden. A burden. The word hit harder than anything else. Because while he was trying to protect me, he was also shutting me out. And suddenly, everything made sense. But it didn't feel better. Not the way I thought it would. Because the truth didn't erase the distance. It just explained it. I used to think the truth fixed everything. That once you understood something, it would stop hurting the same way. But standing there, listening to Daniel explain everything, I realized something I hadn't before. Understanding doesn't undo the damage. It just gives it context. And sometimes, that's not enough. I wish you had told me, I said quietly. He looked at me, frustration and regret written all over his face. I was trying to help you. I know, I replied. And I meant it. That's what made it harder. Because this wasn't betrayal. Not in the way I expected. It wasn't lies meant to hurt me. It was silence meant to protect me. But the result was the same. A distance. Disconnection. A version of us that slowly fell apart while neither of us said what needed to be said. I felt like I was losing you, I admitted. His expression softened. I was doing all of this for us. I nodded slowly. But you didn't let me be part of it. That was the difference. He carried everything alone. And in doing that, he left me alone too. The silence that followed wasn't angry. It was heavy. Final in a way that didn't need to be said out loud. Because deep down, we both understood something at the same time. Love isn't just about what you do for someone. It's about letting them stand beside you while you do it. And somewhere along the way, we stopped standing together. I looked at him one last time before stepping back. Not with anger. Not even with sadness. Just clarity. Because now I understood everything. And maybe that was the problem. If he had just told me the truth, would I have stayed?